Hello, 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 hello. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Lockdown Live. Hello, hello, hello. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Lockdown Live. Yes, this is Lockdown Live right here on the VoiceOver Academy handle. Yes, welcome once again to Lockdown live on the VoiceOver Academy handle. My name is Sheon Shobo, and I'm going to be your host today. And today we're going to be having somebody fantastic. This guy's an innovator, an inventor, and he has created something for the African market. It's good to see you guys. Thank you for joining us. I see Morenike Adams. How you doing, Mom? Good to have you around. Yes. I'm going to check right now if Abantu audio is on so that we start. All right, they're on now. He's going to be joining us anytime soon right now. All right, how you doing,
Hey.
bro? How's it going?
Good, man. Yourself?
I'm fantastic. I'm doing very well. Good to have you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Luc of Abantu Audio, who is the founder, president, co-founder, of course, of Abantu Audio. They've been great stuff, great stuff over there, and it's actually for the African audience and, of course, the colored audience, basically, right? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
It's a little choppy, but I can hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. So, first of all, how you keeping up with the isolation and the lockdown over there?
I've been good, man. Just trying to stay productive. Spending time with family. So it's
Right.
kind of been kind of refreshing in a way, honestly.
Well, how's the coronavirus there? Is it going down or still going up?
I mean, stateside, they seem to be losing their mind. They want to start opening up the economy or portions of it, even though
Yeah, same thing here as well.
it doesn't make sense. But that's
Okay. Okay, so we're going now. So the first question here was on taught history and other various issues ignited the passion, right, to establish Bantu, which basically details history and narratives of people of color and marginalized communities. Can you take us through your journey? What is your journey? What's your story? We want to hear your story, right? Because I mean, this is unusual if you really think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I was born in Haiti. But I grew up in Florida since I was like 2 or 3, and growing up in Florida, they never really in the school systems they never really taught us about Black history at all.
Right.
We went to school at Booker T. Washington Middle School in Florida, and even though I went to school, they never really taught us. Anybody in Black history never taught us about Toussaint Louverture, Dessalines, which were the Haitian revolutionaries who overthrew the French rule. So, I didn't necessarily grow up knowing this information. I knew a little more Haitian side because obviously I'm Haitian. There's just cultural pride there. But when it came to overall Black history, that was something that wasn't there. And even when I got to college, that's something that I still didn't really learn unless I took like an African studies class. They weren't really talking about anything in basic history about Black history outside of slavery. And me being very Pan-African, I also saw that they didn't teach us anything about Black history prior to slavery, as if Africans didn't have a history prior to being stolen from their land and brought here to this country. So back in 2015, I was really on And so career, and
Mm.
I didn't necessarily have time to read the book. So I said, you know what, let me go find me some audiobooks that, you know, I could just listen to, and I don't have to actually you know, read the books. I could just listen to them while I'm at work or whatever the case is. And what I found was
Mm.
that a lot of our books weren't on audiobook at the time.
Right.
And so it dawned on me, I was like, you know what, this would be a perfect opportunity to create a platform that kind of represents what it is that I feel is in not
Mm.
only our communities, but a lot of communities of color. And so,
Right.
so that was where the idea was sparked at. And I reached out to
Mm.
my business partner, one of them, his name is Alejandro Gonzalez, and I've known him for
Mm.
like, you know, going on 15 years. And you know, I
Wow.
reached out to him because I actually spent some time in New Mexico. You know, I went to school there for some time,
Right.
and what I found out I was there was that not only do they not speak about Black history, but they also don't speak about the Chicano, Latino,
Mm.
or indigenous narratives. And so, so I reached out to him and I told him, hey, you know, this is the idea that I have for the Black community and the African diaspora community overall. But I think this is something that, you know, the brown community and the indigenous community also need, because they don't talk, they don't speak about our cultures. They don't talk about our history. They don't,
Right.
you know,
Mm.
we're a marginalized and very oppressed group, and the only time they ever speak about our stuff is when they can make some type of money off of it. And
Mm.
so, you know, reached out to him, and that's when we decided, you know, this is what we're gonna do. Head first, we jumped in and we created Abantu. We didn't launch the website yet, but the idea was forming. We laid the foundation and the groundwork for it.
Mm. So it's been on for about 5 years now.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So would you say that you filled that vacuum of what you set out to achieve in terms of helping people know much more about their culture? Would you say Abantu Audio has filled that vacuum?
Yeah, definitely. I think we have, and I think we continue to do so. Majority ways. I mean, on part of the platform, that they're getting to hear things that, or hear
Mm.
things and see things and learn about things that they never really knew about, which ultimately our schools don't. But one caveat
Mm.
that I want to mention is that in the process of building Ubuntu Audio because it took us about 3 years just to learn about audiobooks and publishing,
Mm.
and just to learn what to do, because you know, when you don't have anybody to show you, you gotta you gotta learn. So
Mm.
so you know, a lot of trial and error. And as we were doing this trial and error, my
Mm.
co-founder, he reached out to me. He's like, you know what, you know, people can learn through fiction as well, Luke, because that wasn't my mentality at the time. I was just thinking about, you know, nonfiction history. And he was like, you know, people can learn through fictional stories and narratives. And I was
Right.
like, you know what, you're absolutely right. And so as we did our research within the publishing industry and started seeing how culturally and racially monopolized that industry was, I believe
Mm.
January 2020, they sent a survey saying that at this time, the publishing industry is about 76% white, right?
Mm.
So as we did our history and learned a little more about the publishing industry, like, wow, this is something where it has to open up to, you know, fictional stories as well. A lot of narratives that need to be told and can be learned from a cultural perspective, that are more fictional. And so we open the doors up for the fictional side of the house as well. So yeah, when it comes to just being culturally relatable, understanding history, knowing more about in-depth history, and seeing where the intersectionalities of our
Mm.
communities cross, I think we fill that void very well.
Mm. Right. Awesome. Awesome. So yeah. The next question is about authors. So an actor once said, "The best kind of stories to tell are those that are true to us as people of color." Right. So what makes an author's work
Right.
eligible enough to run on a Bantu audio? So you have an author that has written maybe a fiction or non-fictional book. What actually makes it eligible to be on a Bantu audio?
Right. So we're very selective, you know, because obviously we have a so-called niche demographic that we're targeting. And so one thing for us, what we want our platform to do ultimately is help us as a community, as a people, as a culture, and ultimately society to progress and really grow and learn different perspectives. So for us, because we feel like there's a lot of the platforms. But for us, we really want the core of what we do to be about, you know, progression, and whether it's being able to learn to a fictional story that they can culturally relate to, you know, something that they can culturally see themselves in, and ultimately open up the imaginations and the creativity within within our mindsets. Because one of the things I think that keeps us you know, stuck as a people is we don't necessarily have the creative lens to know that these things are possible. You know what I mean?
Wow, wow. So are you are you saying that it's only basically authors of color that can have books on Bantu audio, or are you also saying that it's just things that have to do with history, what of business, things that have to do with businesses, black businesses that have, you know, really run the world? So what would you say about people that have written books like that as well?
Right. So for us, we're attacking this in multiple waves. So so the first wave that we plan on attacking is really the cultural and historical perspective, because that's the wave, especially when it comes to the African diaspora, the indigenous individuals here in this continent here in South America. You know, the cultural and historical part of it is so critical, and it's missing and it's lacking and it's needed. And so that's the first wave of titles that we're really trying to put on our platform, so that, you know, we want to try to, again, that's our core. Our core is history, the culture, those type of narratives. And so that's essentially the core of what we're doing in the first wave of what we're trying to accomplish. But after this wave of culture, history, and you know, political issues that have caused us to be in the position that we are now, we do plan on having a second and third wave of different type of titles that we plan on having on our platform, which is to help those that are with the innovative mind to see ideas from a business perspective or lens, or those with the you know, spiritual mind to have more spiritual self-help, you know, mental health type titles on the platform. So those are all titles and stories that we feel are important for our communities. However, we want to try to attack it by waves and not necessarily do it all in one.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so my next question is tailored towards the voiceover talent. How rewarding would you say this has been for voiceover talent? So and what exactly would you say your criteria are for selecting and contracting voice talents? So two questions in one.
So
Two
to
questions
answer
in
your
one.
first question, I think I got you. Try to get me, huh? But I think to answer your first question, I think one of the most powerful things, and one of the reasons why we even decided to do this platform is we believe that audiobooks and the platform that we've built really attacks a multitude of different areas within our community. So, you know, we talk about ownership, we talk about economic opportunities and things like that. And so one thing is, just so people that may not be aware, the audiobook industry globally is a $3.2 billion industry globally.
Wow.
And
wow.
There's an article.
Can you say that again? Can you say that again?
Yeah. The audiobook, the global
billion.
audiobook, the global
Guys,
audiobook
Guys, did
industry,
you hear that?
right? The global audiobook industry is a $3.2 billion industry, and it's growing. And every year it sees double-digit growth, right?
Wow.
And so, you know, and that's a global market, and so and it's growing. And actually, this year they're stating that at the end of this year, especially with this COVID thing and everybody staying inside, you know,
Exactly.
so they're saying that by the end of this year, 2020, it's going to go from 3.2 billion to 3.5 billion global market. And keep in mind, all of this is happening currently without Africa being a part of that, which is critical and very important. I'm looking forward to having that conversation later during this talk. But with a $3.2 billion industry, and you know, with the publishing industry, you know, let's say Black people in general, African Americans, whatever the case is, we're only 5%. We're only 5% of the publishing industry, right? We only make up 5% of the publishing industry, and in the audiobook space, it's probably even worse than that, right?
Wow.
Latinos, you know, in Hispanic people, they only make 6% of the publishing industry, and again, it's probably more than likely worse than that in the audiobook space. So if we as a people can attain 10% of a $3.5 billion industry, what kind of economic, you know, growth can we see within our communities? What type of economic developments can we start building within our communities? How can we begin to uplift ourselves from this oppression that we've been laid on to begin to establish ourselves and put ourselves in the rightful place where we belong, you know?
Wow. From a $3.2 billion industry. Wow. Guys, what is your share there? What is your share? What share do you want there? You know, there's still a lot,
right?
There's still a lot of space, right? For a lot of people who want to work, you know. So
yeah,
this person says Abantu seeks to help enlighten, educate on true histories and narratives of marginalized communities. What measures have you put in place? You know, it says, what measures have you put in place to ensure storytellers and writers work get targeted to the audience, you know?
Right.
To the audience, yeah.
Right. So you know, thanks God for the internet, because I know oftentimes the internet can be a bad thing, but when used for good, the internet can be a very powerful thing. And so I mean, look at us right now. We're on Instagram Live. You're in Nigeria. I'm here in Texas, and we're able to speak to a global market. And I feel the internet, social media, and other things, when used for good in the appropriate manner, they can be very powerful tools. And so we definitely use social media as one of our primary ways to really push our narratives. Luckily, my head of technology, my partner Hondo, we set up back end algorithms and utilize words and other ways to push our information to our specific target market. And luckily, the internet has provided us and given us that leverage to do so. And that's one of our primary ways of doing so.
What would you say that? Would you say that you've gotten a level of very skilled voiceover talents, you know, to actually come on your platform, you know, to read these books? Because, you know, one of the things that we found out is most of these books written by very great authors in Nigeria, like, for example, Chinua Achebe. I remember Chinua Achebe, his book was read by some white guy, you know, and I was wondering how that was going to work, you know. So can you expatiate on the importance of Black people reading Black books, right? You know, that's very important. What can you expatiate on voice talents, Black voice talents reading Black literature?
Right, for sure. And so for me, I think that we have a different understanding and a very specific, you know, connection to specific narratives and stories that, you know, other people from other cultures may not. And, you know, it's the same thing for at least for me. I believe that if it's an African narrative, then it should be narrated by an African individual.
Right.
If it's somewhere from Nigeria, it should be narrated by Nigeria. They'll have the cultural perspective and understanding to really, you know, really push that that element of passion and emotion during the story. If it's a story about an indigenous individual in South America, about Haitians, I'm trying to find a Haitian storyteller. And that's one of the biggest things that our platform is trying to do, is because one of the issues that we found within the publishing industry, talking to some of the, you know, top, some of the top narrators in the game, is that even some of the top narrators still have issues when narrating some stories from a cultural perspective, because they still want it read so that the white audience can understand and appreciate it. And basically, because that's who typically these companies are marketing to. That's who typically are the ones, you know, that they're pushing their narrative to. So even if it's an African story, they want it to be written and read and narrated in a way that is going to be essentially beneficial and for their audience, which is primarily white folks, to be honest with you. So, you know, our thing is, we don't need to do that. We shouldn't do that, because it needs to stay culturally rich. It needs to stay, you know, culturally relevant. And I believe that it loses some of that when you have different, you know, people from different cultures narrating that story. Now, granted, because there's not a lot of us in these spaces, you know, sometimes you're gonna have to deal with some of the storytellers. So, for example, you know, if we have a story, a Ghanaian story, you know, we may not necessarily be able to find a Ghanaian narrator. So, you know, we're gonna get as close as we can with the Nigerian. We're gonna try to get as close as we can. But ultimately, you know, it makes sense that, you know, the story be read by someone from that has the cultural perspective and has the cultural norms, speech, you know, to narration, as I'm sure you know, a lot of that comes from the culture. And so the way we may say in the US, people in Britain may say some way completely different. You know what I mean? So it's important to have that cultural relevancy. So that's something that we definitely strive for.
Wow, awesome, man. Luke is just on fire today, man. Just telling us a lot of stuff that we need to know. Okay, so there's somebody here. Jim Mario says, the gentleman says, is there anything specific Abantu Audio would prefer to hear read as I prepare to sending a recording? I have a desire to narrate for Abantu. Right. Did you hear that?
I mean, and actually, yeah, I definitely do, and I appreciate that brother or sister that reached out. And we're obviously open, because one thing we're trying to kick the door down and bring our people up in there, because there's not enough of us. And so as far as anything that we want to read, we're open to listen to it. We're open to give critique and feedback, and go from there. So if he wants to reach out to us, DM us, or specifically email us, which is in our bio, feel free to do so, and we'll listen to it. We'll check it out, and if it's something that we feel is going to be beneficial for our community as a whole in the diaspora, then we're all for it.
Awesome. Okay, so what would you say is the in high demand of listenership, right? From the listener's perspective, what would you say is in high demand of listenership from your platform?
Right. So right now, I think two of our most popular and Black Wall Street is essentially a narrative about the Tulsa, Oklahoma Greenwood district, which was essentially an all-black business district specifically in Oklahoma, ran by people They own taxis, they own buses, they owned all this property, all this land, all these businesses, and they were one of the most wealthy 1920s, 1900s. And so, and unfortunately, because of hatred, because of jealousy, because, white supremacy, and they don't want to see black people do well together, they they bombed it, they destroyed it, they burned it down, and unfortunately, it was never able to come back to its popular book on our platform, because it just speaks to the fact that we need, another story that we have, Sean Gore, and so it's about a Cuban American, Afro-Latino Cuban American out of Miami, who basically he gets involved with the, their religious following of Santeria in Cuba. And the interesting part of Santeria is that Santeria gets a lot of its religious beliefs and traditions. A lot of that come from the Yoruba. A lot of that come from the Yoruba tribe in Nigeria. So you have a Yoruba deity and culture and traditions and religious practices happening in Cuba and ultimately in Miami, and that's what that story is about. It's about this Afro-Cuban American who learns more about the Santeria practice, which essentially ties back to the Yoruba tribe, and he goes on an adventure. It's a fictional story, so it's a thriller, it's a detective story, all that. But it's a powerful story because it illustrates the diaspora and how our stories intersect one another, from Africa to the Caribbean, the Latino narrative, and here even in the States. So that's a very popular story for us. And the last one, I believe, is it's called it's The Women in the Zoot Suit, and that essentially is about the Mexican Americans who were essentially beaten during a so-called riot in Los Angeles, where white Navy men basically beat these Latinos and these Mexican people, and ultimately any people of color that was wearing these type of zoot suits, they beat them down, and in 2-3 day riots. So that's one of another very popular narrative on our platform right now.
Wow. So how do you categorize your book? Nonfiction. How many categories do you have? How do you categorize your books on the platform?
Well, I mean, we have fiction, we have nonfiction, and then one thing that's interesting about us, because we're trying to get it from a cultural perspective, and this is actually going to happen because we're developing our app right now. We're developing our iPhone and Android app right now, and I'm hoping to launch it here in the next few months. So the way we plan on categorizing it is really going to be from a cultural perspective. So, and we actually had one of our followers say, hey, it's hard to find these Black authors on these other platforms. And so since our platform is, for Black people, for brown people, for people of color in general, for the diaspora, there's going to be specific categories. So you're going to have, let's say Caribbean American or Caribbean, you'll have a Caribbean narrative, or you'll have a Latino or South American, Central American narrative. And you'll have the different African narratives that we plan on getting on the platform, whether it's West Africa, East Africa, and or South Africa, Central Africa, kind of like a map. So depending on the region that you want to hear a story about, you can choose that specific region, and based on that region, you'll have a drop down of different stories there. Another way that we're looking at, we've been thinking about categorizing it, is essentially having somewhat of a browser page where it's social political issues, because that's something that we feel strongly about, whether it's historical issues or just historical issues in general. So there's numerous ways that we're looking at creating a category, but it is definitely going to be from a cultural lens and perspective for sure.
Right, right, right. Wow, this is it's big, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I want to find out if you're gonna hire a voice talent, what are the five qualities that you look for um, in a voice talent? So you want to hire a voice talent for a project, right? A book project, a narration project. What are the five qualities you look for or you look out for in in a voice talent?
Right. So one of the main things that even with experienced narrators
Mm.
is the pacing. The pacing is so important because most
Mm.
narrators their pacing is fast and they read
Hmm.
fast. And
Wow.
when it comes from an audiobook audience, they can't
Mm.
they can't they can't pick up all those words that you're saying. So you got to slow.
Right, 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 right. Mm.
So the pacing is critical. Like you have
Mm.
to be able to have a good pace.
Mm-hmm.
The other
Your pace must be
but
consistent.
exactly. It has
Right.
to be a consistent pace, and not fast to where we can't understand what you're saying. But then
Saying.
again, not so slow where it's like, what's the next
Right,
word?
right.
So that's number one. The second thing is the flow, because
Mm.
when I think about narration, because I'm a big hip hop head, right? So when I think
Yeah.
about narration, voice acting, and poetry in general, and speaking, I look at it from a rhythm and flow, like hip hop, you know.
Mm.
So
Mm.
you have to have a good flow. You have to have not only just a good pace, but then you have to have a good flow and understand
Mm.
how to enunciate words. You have to
Mm-hmm.
know to when it's appropriate to enunciate a word, when it's appropriate to,
Mm. To
when
inflect
it's
when
important.
when it's time
Yeah,
to inflect, you inflect at the time where
inflections
you.
are very critical. When it's important to and this is the voice acting piece of it, when it's important to bring in an emotion. And one
Mm.
thing and it goes back to the question you asked before, why it's important for us to read stories, because
Mm.
we're from these cultures, because these are our stories. When it
Mm-hmm.
comes to show that emotion, because we can
Mm.
relate to this story, we're able to
Right.
bring that emotion. And so for the
Mm.
audience, they're able to hear that story and hear that emotion and really connect to it and see that as, wow, this is powerful, right? So
Mm.
pacing, the flow, the inflection. Are you able to
Mm.
inflect? Are you able
Mm.
to bring out the emotion? Um,
Right.
also. And the last thing I think is really, and it may be a little underrated, but really personality, because every person is different. Everybody has their own
Mm.
way of doing things.
Mm.
And even when it comes to, and this is something that I always tell our narrators, even when it comes to a dry nonfiction book, if you
Right.
bring your personality, the emotions, the inflections, the pace, the flow,
Mm.
the rhythm, if you bring all those in, even the
Mm.
driest, most boring book, the audience
Mm.
will find entertainment. The audience will find they'll love it, because the way you read
Mm.
it makes them curious. It makes them want to hear more. And I always tell them, like, think about Morgan Freeman. Morgan Freeman can
Mm.
read the back of the cereal box and
Right,
it's
right,
very
right,
entertaining,
right.
you know.
That is true. Right, that is true.
You know,
That
Morgan
guy's
Freeman,
voice, man,
he
something
can
else.
read anything. It's like, oh, more, you know.
Yeah, he just brings meaning to words, right? Like you just listen to words and look at. Did you listen to what he did for the corona virus thing? It was amazing. I was like, wow.
It's
you
Morgan
know.
Freeman, and
Mm,
that's the same energy that we always encourage every narrator to bring. Like, just listen to the Morgan
mm,
Freeman. Try to bring that to every narration.
mm, mm. But people argue that. Yeah, hello. Are you there?
What was that?
Are you there? I think it was the network.
No,
The network acting up.
I couldn't hear that last piece.
Yes,
No,
I
it's
was
fine.
saying. I was saying. Do you think black narrators? People have there's an opinion that black narrators aren't good storytellers. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, oral storytelling, a part of our ancestry lineage since the dawn in the beginning of civilization. You know, civilization began, and we've been doing oral storytelling since the beginning. So to tell someone black that they're not good at storytelling, basically that means to me the human race ain't good at storytelling, because we accentuated that, right?
I like that.
I mean? Like it's a part of our ancestral lineage. So, and if anything, we're not good at it, it's only because, you know, there's institutions and systems that keep us out of these industries, that don't allow us the opportunities to open door to allow us to get better at it. You know what I mean? So if we're not good at it, it's probably because we're good at it because you want to hear it. You're listening to it with a European ear rather than an African ear or an indigenous ear. So.
Okay. All right. Great. So somebody says here you have successfully partnered with numerous authors and publishers, which include university presses. Do you plan to partner with African university presses and authors? Right. I think this is a good time to say what you have been doing with the African audience right now, for the African audience.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that, and I feel that is a big thing, especially at this time where Africa is in my opinion. I feel that Africa is going to be place, in my opinion, and is becoming that. And it's important that, you know, we as African people own things, and so to establish like this that's African owned. And what I mean by African owned, I mean, because I consider myself an African, and so, you know, one of these European companies using a black face to sell, you know, their product or sell their platform, it's actually African owned. And so being that it's African owned, a platform be owned, but from the top down, African owned and controlled. And I'll give you an example. We actually just got a book, and I'm gonna answer your question after. But we just got a fully completed book from a self-published Nigerian author based on who wrote about basically an African fiction during the Benin Kingdom, right? And we got that book, and that book was narrated by Bonnie Turpine. Bonnie Turpine is the same narrator that narrated The Children of Blood and Bones. She won an audio award for that book, and another book as well. So she's a very powerful narrator, and she's also Pan-African. So we got her to read it because we feel that because she has a name and a name brand, even though this self-published author may not necessarily be known, because of her name brand, people are going to listen to it. And because she's an amazing storyteller, people are going to listen to it. And that book is going to be distributed on Abantu audio. And so you're looking at the author is African, the story is African, the narrator is African, and the platform is African. And so that's really what we're pushing. So we're actually on the verge of finalizing an agreement with a university in Ghana right now. We're looking to finalize hopefully by the summer. This COVID thing kind of threw things off a little bit, and to bring more individuals into these spaces. We're also hoping to partner with you all at VoiceOver Academy to be one of the premier.
We're here for you.
And I appreciate you, brother. And we're hoping to have that be the premier place for a lot of these audiobook productions that we're doing. We've reached out to publishers in Cameroon. I've reached out to publishers in Nigeria. I'm in talks with the vice chancellor in Rwanda. I'm in with individuals in South Africa and Sierra Leone. Like I'm trying my absolute best to reach out to the continent, because one thing I think is important and that's needed. We need to bring the diaspora together, and I feel that since we're stateside and brothers and sisters like you on the continent are so down and willing to collaborate with us, I think it's time that we come home. I think it's time we come home, and I think it's time that we establish that home base in Africa.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. Great job you guys are doing, man. Great job. You know, somebody said I'm here for this. She's a fantastic narrator as well. Fantastic narrator. I know her personally, you know, and she says I'm here for this. Okay, so somebody says here, what measures are in place for partnerships with voice talents for your audio projects? Right? What measures are in place for partnerships with voice talents for your audio projects? I can't hear you. I'm trying to hear you.
I couldn't hear you. I saw your mouth moving, but I couldn't hear you.
It's freezing. Network. Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me now? No, I can't hear you now. I can't hear you again. It's gone out again. Let me try the audio again. Can you hear me? Let me try the audio again. Sorry guys, network's acting funny. Okay.
Right, you there?
All right, great.
Cool. You
Right.
back?
I guess the network is acting up.
Nah, right. That's all. I understand.
Okay, so like I said before, what measures are in place? That's what this person asked here. What measures are in place for partnerships with voice talents for your audio projects?
What networks are in place? So we have very integrated. We've integrated vertically in many ways, stateside as far as our process. So a lot of we at least stateside we have a pool of over 100 narrators stateside. Right. And so those are all internally within the Abantu audio structure. What I'm hoping to establish out there in Africa is through partnerships with universities, through partnerships with voiceover academies specifically. We would like to allow the voiceover academy in Nigeria to be the of where we get a lot of our narrators talent from, specifically on the continent. And of course, in any way where we can, establish partnerships with African universities to bring in, because that's actually something that we're working here in the state. Use historically Black colleges and universities. We're trying to establish partnerships with them that it can be that starting from a collegiate level, students to learn about voice acting, about over, and about the actual benefits and how you can make a career out of this. So we're hoping that we can establish those partnerships with universities, the HBCUs here, and the universities out in Africa. But again, Voiceover Academy being the lead for a lot of that work.
No, awesome. We are here for you. We're here to partner with you, and of course, make Abantu Audio the premier audiobook partner for us here in Africa. Because one of the things that we fail to do, is actually sell our stories, or tell our stories, and we need to do that now. Right. It's very important that we do that now. But what would you with your audience? Would you agree with the saying that says Black people don't read?
Black people don't read?
Yeah,
Is that what?
there's this myth out there. There is this myth out there that if you want to hide something, you put it in a book. For if you want to hide something from a black person, put it in a book.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with that? Because that's the narrative being sold. That black people don't read. I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
So I think there's a, and this is why, right?
Right.
Yeah, and I think this is why it's important to give.
Yeah, I can hear you. I
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Can you hear me? You can? All right, cool. I think context. This is why it's so important to have historical context, right? So when you talk can't read, where that comes from is from, honestly, from the States, right? Because historically in the States, they didn't allow Africans, when they enslaved them and brought them to this country, they didn't allow them to read in this country. They didn't allow them to read. They didn't allow them to write. They stripped us of our culture, of our African culture, even though they weren't able to 100%. But they did their best. They stripped of our language, our names, everything about it, right? They stripped us of that. And then, after the Civil War and all that, now all of a sudden they just threw us out there expecting us to figure things out, which, credit to the brothers and sisters here in America, we're able to do that. However, there's been institutions set up in place, and this wrong has never been corrected here in this country, in America, right? So when you say that black people can't read, well, number one, that's not true, because clearly we have black narrators reading these books, right? So that in itself is some BS. But two, and if we can't read, it's because of these suppressive white supremacist institutions, ultimately, that has institutionalized and set it up in a way to keep us from this information, this knowledge. For perfect example, right? When a lot of the Europeans left, and were essentially, a lot of African countries won their independence. From my understanding, countries destroyed a lot of the stuff that they had there. Like, oh no, you're not going to get none of this that we built, and we're just going to leave you, and we're going to store all this, right? So yeah, historically tried to set us up for failure, and now have the goal to say that we can't read, when we were the ones that created sciences and math and all this. You have some nerve. You have some nerve. So no, I don't believe that at all. In fact, I have a nice library here that I'm trying to build up. We quite a bit.
So, and it goes down.
Right? We read quite a bit. However, why audiobooks are so important is because they make them digitally accessible to individuals that may not necessarily have the time or the acumen, because of these educational institutions that do not invest in our communities. For those individuals that aren't able to receive the proper education, because again, these institutions don't care about our communities, then yeah, audiobooks makes it easier. It makes it a lot more easier and accessible for people like that. It makes it easier for people that are blind. But to say that black people don't read, that's just a fallacy.
Right, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. I just wanted to hear your opinion on that myth, because I hear people say it a lot. People say that a lot, and I'm like, this is not true. You don't have proof for this statement. And a lot of people just come up with that.
What it is, and like I said, it stems from that historical context of black people not being allowed to read in the U.S. Or being allowed to read throughout Central and South America. That's really where a lot of it comes from, and that's just not true. That's not true. I mean, even the slaves that were forced, that were essentially forced and put to death because they couldn't read, or they weren't allowed to read. People like Frederick Douglass, who didn't read anything, he learned himself, taught himself how to read. So, how y'all,
Wow. Okay, so the final question, because Instagram would probably take us off very soon. The final
Right.
question. So how do we execute, how do you guys execute digital distribution when it comes to the books? How do you guys digitally distribute these books, so that it gets to a lot of people, so that a lot of people are able to purchase it and all?
Right. So luckily for us, again, I'm gonna go back to technology. Luckily for us, we own our technology. You know what I mean? We own it.
Fantastic,
It's
fantastic.
ours.
Wow.
We developed it from
Amazing.
scratch. That's it. The way they can shut us
Wow.
down is if they shut down the internet. You know what I mean? So
Amazing,
because we
amazing.
own technology, right? Because we own our technology, because we own the proprietorship of it, we're able to leverage that technology and really push and distribute our platform globally. If I'm not mistaken, individuals right now in Nigeria and throughout the continent can actually go to AbantuAudio.com and see our site. You know what I mean?
Right.
Obviously, we have to set with some of the governments out there and all the that kind of thing. But ultimately, with the advent of our app, the iPhone and Android app that we're looking to launch here in the next few months, which is, by the way, going to be the first Black-owned audiobook platform here in the States.
Awesome.
So with that being said, with what we're doing here in the States, we can actually distribute a lot of that throughout the globe, which in a way gives us somewhat of a benefit being here in the States, because we're here in the States. They do have the so-called infrastructure that allows us to be global, and because we own the technology that allows us really push it to where we want to push it to. So that's our primary source of distribution, is through our platform, using technology, using our coming out using our website, and we're looking to at some point in the future, as we begin to scale our platform, starting with the expansion into Africa, we will look for other digital distributors that can assist us with it and get us to where we need to be. But I think we have everything that we need to distribute globally.
Wow, amazing, man! Look, you guys are doing a great job, and honestly speaking, it's an honor to partner with you guys, and knowing that we have the same mission, to actually tell African stories, and of course put Africa on that global map, where it belongs, right? So so before we go, just a shout out to Voice of Academy, Voice Talents. They want to hear from you. Just a shout out, basically.
Yay! Shout out, though. Yeah, man. I think I love the fact that you guys are the leader and the pioneers in this on the continent, and I think that ultimately, not only just the African diaspora, but the indigenous population of this world in general. I feel that we all have all of our stories need to be told, and it's time that platform stands up and says, we're going to be the ones to sell the story, and we don't care about the white audience not liking it. Cry your white tears. We don't care, because it's time that our stories be told. It's time that we tell. Not only that, more importantly, it's time that we own the ownership part is the most critical part. It's important that we own
the technology.
Exactly. It's important that we own it, because if we don't own it, to me, that's just slavery all over again. We're working for other people. So when we own it, and when we're the ones pioneering it and pushing it forward culturally and historically with the lens that we have, I think it has the ability to really impact the world. So I'm here for it, man. And I appreciate you for being so down.
Right. Great. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you, and of course, we can't wait to see you in Nigeria very soon.
Hey, I'm coming, man.
Hopefully after this coronavirus.
As soon as COVID lets me get on a plane, I'm coming.
Hoping to see you so soon, right?
You have a good
Definitely.
one, brother.
When you come, for sure, we're gonna host you. The Voice of Our Academy is gonna host you. So just have it in mind. When you come, we're gonna host you for sure. That's for sure.
That's love.
Looking forward to doing more things with you.
Definitely.
Of course, our narrators over here. Yeah, our narrators over here too are expectant. they're looking to audition and do stuff with Abantu Audio for sure.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for your.
I'm hoping, no problem. I'm hoping that I get some feedback from all the African publishers that I've reached out to, so that way we can actually, again, and behind Africa. You know what I mean?
For sure, my bro.
Awesome.
For sure. Thank
Appreciate
you so much,
brother.
man. Have a wonderful day ahead. All right.
You too.
Yeah. Cheers, bro.
Cheers.
Peace.